Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the fascinating world of happiness.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, and we're going to be guided by your selections from Daniel Gilbert's book, Stumbling on Happiness.
Love that book.
Yeah, it's a great one. And we're really going to try to explore how our brains try to predict happiness
Okay.
and why we often miss the mark.
Yes,
So
fun.
get ready for some thought-provoking insights.
I'm excited to unpack these ideas with you. Gilbert's work really challenges some of our assumptions about how we make decisions and how we experience happiness.
Yeah, and one of the things that really struck me was Gilbert's exploration of the power and the limitations of our imaginations.
Hmm.
He uses this great analogy of a realism gap. Basically, when we envision the future, our minds tend to fill in details that may or may not actually happen.
Right.
It's like creating a movie trailer in our heads, but the final film might be drastically different.
Yeah, what's interesting is that our brains are kind of hardwired to focus on the unusual or extreme experiences when we're making these predictions.
Oh,
Yeah, we're drawn to those vivid, memorable moments, even if they aren't representative of everyday life.
oh, that makes sense. Think about planning a vacation. We often fixate on that picture-perfect sunset or that incredible meal,
Right.
and we build our expectations around those highlights, but we conveniently forget about the potential for flight delays or sunburn or those moments of sheer exhaustion that inevitably come with travel.
And then we're disappointed when the reality doesn't match our idealized vision. It's like our brains have tricked us into believing that the extraordinary is ordinary.
Totally. And Gilbert gives this great example of commuters on a subway platform. They were asked to imagine how they'd feel if they missed their train, and they pictured chaos, frustration, and potentially missing a job interview.
Oh, no.
Worst case scenario stuff. But they completely forgot about all the times they missed a train and it was no big deal.
Right.
They just hopped on the next one and went about their day. So their predictions were skewed because their memories were biased towards those dramatic negative events.
Makes
So how do we escape this trap of our overactive imaginations? Is there a more reliable way to predict our future happiness?
Well, Gilbert proposes this fascinating concept called surrogation. Instead of relying solely on our imaginations, we can learn from the experiences of others who have already been in similar situations.
It makes sense. Why reinvent the wheel when you can tap into a wealth of real-world experiences?
Right.
Imagine you're considering moving to a new city. Instead of just daydreaming about how exciting it would be, you could talk to people who actually live there. They can give you the inside scoop, the good, the bad, and the unexpected.
The research on surrogation is actually quite compelling. Studies have shown that people who are forced to use surrogation make more accurate predictions about their future happiness
Oh, wow.
compared to those who rely solely on their imaginations.
That's amazing. But Gilbert also points out a big hurdle to using this powerful tool.
Okay.
Our "we're so special" syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
We tend to overestimate our uniqueness, believing our emotional reactions are more distinct than they truly are. We dismiss the value of others' experiences because, well, they're not me.
Right. We fall into that trap of thinking their life is different. They probably handle things differently. But in reality, we're much more alike than we realize.
Totally. This reminds me of another concept Gilbert discusses: super replicators. These are beliefs about happiness that spread like wildfire,
Okay.
even if they aren't necessarily true. He compares them to viruses infecting our thinking, even if they don't actually lead to the happiness they promise. Think about the classic money buys happiness belief.
Yeah, it's everywhere. In advertising, in movies, even in casual conversations, we're bombarded with this message that financial success is the key to happiness.
And it's a super replicator because it promotes the very actions that keep it alive.
Oh, how so?
We work hard to earn money, assuming it will bring us joy. But for many people, that pursuit of wealth becomes an endless treadmill, never quite reaching the happiness destination.
It's a good example of how these super replicators can kind of hijack our decision-making,
Right.
leading us down paths that may not align with our true values or sources of happiness.
So what does this mean for you, the listener?
Yeah.
It's a reminder to be critical of those common beliefs about happiness. Don't just assume that money, possessions, or even achievements will automatically equal bliss.
Yeah.
Think about what truly brings you fulfillment.
It's about understanding that happiness isn't a one-size-fits-all formula.
Right.
It's a personal journey, and it requires some introspection to discover what truly matters to you.
Now, speaking of tricky concepts, let's talk about memory. Gilbert argues that our memories are not these perfect recordings of our past happiness. They're more like interpretations shaped by all sorts of biases and filters.
He uses this brilliant analogy: memory is less like a photo album and more like an impressionist painting.
I like that.
It's an artist's rendition of our past. not a perfectly accurate representation. And one of the biggest factors that shapes our memories is the peak end rule. We tend to remember the most intense moments of an experience, whether good or bad, and how it ended much more vividly than the experience as a whole.
So it's like that amazing concert you went to. You might remember the encore when the band played your favorite song and the energy of the crowd more clearly than the 2 hours leading up to that point.
Exactly. Or think about a challenging hike you took. The memory might be dominated by that moment you reached the summit with that incredible view and sense of accomplishment, even if the rest of the hike was grueling.
We end up with this highlight reel of the past, which can be great for reminiscing, but maybe not so reliable if we're using those memories to make decisions about future experiences.
Right. Because if we base our choices on these peak moments, we might be setting ourselves up for disappointment. We might go back to that same restaurant expecting every dish to be as mind-blowing as that one appetizer we loved, forgetting that some dishes were just okay.
This makes me wonder if our memories can sometimes hold us back from trying new things or revisiting experiences that weren't perfect the first time around.
It's a great point. We have to remember that our memories are not always objective truth. They are influenced by our current emotions and beliefs.
It's like when you're feeling down and suddenly every memory seems tinged with sadness, even those that were originally positive.
Gilbert actually talks about this in the book. He highlights how our current mood can distort our recollection of past emotions.
So someone going through a difficult breakup might start to believe that all their past relationships were failures, even if they experienced joy and connection at the time.
It's a common trap.
Mm.
We can fall into this pattern of thinking, I was so much happier back then, when in reality, our present circumstances are coloring our perception of the past.
It's like we need to develop a healthy skepticism towards our own memories. Not dismiss them entirely, but be aware that they might not be telling the whole story.
Absolutely. We need to recognize that our memories are not static records. They are dynamic and constantly being reshaped by our current experiences and beliefs.
This whole discussion about memory makes me think of another point Gilbert brings up: presentism. He argues that our present feelings and circumstances have an outsized influence on how we predict we'll feel in the future.
It's such a relatable concept. Think about that familiar feeling of being hangry. When you're hungry, everything seems frustrating and overwhelming.
You might snap at your loved ones or make impulsive decisions that you later regret.
Right. In those moments, it's hard to imagine feeling anything but irritated.
But then you eat something, your blood sugar levels stabilize, and suddenly the world seems a bit brighter.
That's presentism in action. We're projecting our current state onto the future, assuming that what we feel now is a reliable predictor of how we'll feel later.
Gilbert describes this interesting study where volunteers were fed snacks until they were completely stuffed. Then they were asked to predict how much they would enjoy eating potato chips the next day.
They significantly underestimated their future enjoyment of those chips. Their current state of fullness was clouding their judgment.
But of course, the next day, their hunger returned, and those chips probably tasted fantastic. It's such a good illustration of how easily our present state can distort our view of the future.
And this bias can have a big impact on our decision-making. If we're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, we might make choices that seem rational in the moment, but ultimately lead us away from our goals and values.
For example, we might turn down an invitation to a social event because we're feeling drained, but then later regret missing out on the fun and connection.
Exactly. So how do we counteract this presentism bias?
Yeah.
How do we make choices that align with our long-term happiness, even when our current mood is pulling us in a different direction?
It seems like developing self-awareness is key. We need to recognize that our feelings are constantly fluctuating. Just because we feel a certain way right now doesn't mean we'll feel that way tomorrow or next week.
And remember that psychological immune system we talked about earlier. It's constantly working behind the scenes, helping us to adapt and bounce back from challenges. We're often more resilient than we give ourselves credit for.
So maybe the key is to pause, acknowledge our current emotional state, and then try to view the situation from a more objective perspective.
That's a great strategy. And this is where surrogation can be helpful again. By considering the experiences of others who have been in similar situations, we can gain a more balanced view of how our feelings might evolve over time.
Instead of asking ourselves, how would I feel, if we can ask, how did other people feel when...
Exactly. Tapping into that collective wisdom can help us to see beyond the limitations of our own presentism and make more informed decisions about our future happiness. It's like having a panel of advisors who have already walked the path we're considering.
Now, shifting gears a bit, Gilbert also dedicates a significant portion of the book to the tricky task of actually measuring happiness. It's something we all strive for, but how do we even define it, let alone quantify it?
It's a question that has stumped philosophers and scientists for centuries. Happiness is this subjective experience influenced by so many factors. Our genetics, our upbringing, our personality, our circumstances, our values. It's a complex web.
And it's always changing. What makes us happy today might not have the same effect tomorrow. It's like trying to capture lightning in a bottle.
Gilbert actually talks about the work of Daniel Bernoulli, who tried to create a mathematical formula for predicting happiness based on objective factors like wealth and possessions.
But Bernoulli ran into a wall. He could calculate probabilities, but he couldn't quantify the subjective experience of happiness. It highlights a fundamental truth about human nature. We're not just rational calculators. Our emotions are messy and complex.
Think about it. Even if we had all the money in the world or the perfect job or the ideal partner, there's no guarantee that we'd be happy.
Because happiness isn't just about external circumstances. It's also about our internal world, our thoughts, beliefs, expectations, and how we interpret our experiences.
It's like that saying, happiness is an inside job.
So if happiness is so hard to pin down and measure, how do we even begin to make choices that lead us towards it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? That's the age-old pursuit of happiness.
Right.
And Gilbert does offer some insightful strategies based on his research. One key takeaway is to be mindful of those cognitive biases we've been discussing.
So we need to remember that our current mood can really cloud our judgment about the future,
Yes.
and that our memories aren't always these reliable narrators.
Exactly. And don't forget the power of our psychological immune system.
Oh, yeah.
We often underestimate our ability to adapt and bounce back from setbacks.
It's like we have this built-in resilience we're not even fully aware of.
Right.
So once we acknowledge these biases, we can start to make more conscious choices about our lives.
Yeah.
We can pause before making a decision based solely on our current feelings or a skewed memory.
It's like taking a step back and saying, okay, I'm feeling stressed right now, but is this decision truly aligned with my long-term happiness?
And this is where Gilbert's idea of surrogation comes into play again.
Ah, yes. Tapping into the wisdom of others.
Instead of relying on our limited imaginations, why not learn from those who have already walked a similar path?
Right. Think of it like this. Let's say you're considering a career change. Instead of just imagining what it would be like, talk to people who are already in that field, get their firsthand perspective on the day-to-day realities, the challenges, and the rewards.
So it's almost like having this panel of mentors
Yeah,
who can offer guidance based on their own lived experiences.
exactly.
So I love that. It's like we're expanding our own understanding of happiness by tapping into this collective wisdom of others.
Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into stumbling on happiness, I want to leave you with kind of a thought-provoking question that Gilbert touches upon but doesn't fully explore.
Okay.
We've been focusing a lot on how our brains predict and perceive happiness. But what about the role of purpose and meaning in a fulfilling life?
That's a great point. It's like we've been examining the mechanics of happiness. But what about the fuel that drives it?
Yeah, what about those deeper motivations that give our lives direction and significance?
Right, like those super replicators we talked about earlier. It's
Right.
like the beliefs that money and children will bring happiness. They persist not just because they benefit society, but also because they tap into our fundamental human need for purpose.
We want to feel like our lives have meaning, like we're contributing to something larger than ourselves.
It's not just about seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. It's also about finding that sense of purpose, that connection to something that transcends our individual experience.
It's like that feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself, whether it's a community, a cause, or a creative endeavor.
So this has been such an enlightening deep dive. Gilbert's insights have really challenged my assumptions about happiness and given me a new framework for understanding how my own mind works.
He's given us a map of the inner workings of our brains, and it's up to us to use it wisely.
So listeners, as you navigate your own journey towards happiness, remember to be mindful of those cognitive biases, tap into the wisdom of others, and most importantly, don't forget to cultivate that sense of purpose and meaning that makes life feel truly rich and fulfilling. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.